The first gunshot echoed through the abandoned orphanage just before midnight. Old wooden floorboards trembled beneath hurried footsteps. Broken windows rattled as black SUVs surrounded the forgotten building from every direction. A dozen armed men stormed through the rusted front doors. "Fin him. He can't leave this place alive." Their voices bounced through empty hallways, once filled with children's laughter. Now, only silence answered them, except for the sound of someone breathing. Deep inside a tiny storage room beneath the staircase, 20-year-old Adriano DeLuca leaned against the cracked wall, blood pouring steadily from a gunshot wound beneath his ribs. His expensive black suit had long since become soaked with crimson. Every breath hurt. Every heartbeat grew weaker. He tightened his grip around the pistol in his trembling hand. Only 2 bullets remained. Outside the door, the footsteps were getting closer. 1 more minute, maybe less. Adriano closed his eyes. This was how mafia kings died. Not on golden thrones, not surrounded by loyal soldiers, but alone, bleeding, forgotten. The doorknob slowly began to turn. Then, a tiny hand suddenly grabbed his wrist. He opened his eyes. Standing beside him was a little girl, no older than 11. Thin, freckled, dark chestnut curls framed a face far too innocent for the violence surrounding her. Her oversized orphanage sweater hung loosely over tiny shoulders. Bright blue eyes met his without fear. She quietly placed one finger over her lips. "Shh." Adriano stared at her. "You shouldn't be here." She ignored him. Instead, she quickly dragged an old wooden cabinet in front of the storage room entrance. The footsteps stopped outside. One of the gunmen kicked open the nearby classroom. Another searched the kitchen. A flashlight beam swept beneath the cabinet. The little girl calmly held Adriano's hand. He realized she was comforting him, not the other way around. One of the gunmen shouted, "He's bleeding. Search every room." The little girl leaned close enough for him to hear her whisper, "They won't find you. You don't know that." She smiled. "I do." "Why?" "Because this used to be my hiding place." For reasons Adriano couldn't explain, he believed her. Minutes passed. Then, the footsteps faded. The orphanage slowly fell silent once again. The little girl finally released his hand. "You should let me see." Adriano frowned. "See what?" "Your wound." He almost laughed despite the pain. "You're a child. My best friend cuts himself climbing trees every week." She knelt beside him. "I know how to clean blood." Before he could object, she disappeared into the hallway. He almost called after her. Instead, he listened. She returned less than a minute later, carrying a tiny first aid kit nearly as old as the building itself. Carefully, almost professionally, she cleaned the wound. The pain made Adriano wince. She looked up. "Sorry. You don't have to apologize. It hurts. I've survived worse." She tilted her head. "I don't think anyone survives alone." The sentence struck him harder than the bullet. He hadn't heard kindness spoken to him in years. Not since his mother died. Not since violence became his language. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Emma." She smiled. "Emma Bennett. And yours?" He hesitated. If she knew his name, she might already be in danger. So he lied. "My name's Adrian." She accepted the answer without question. "You're a terrible liar." He blinked. "What?" She teed the bandage. "You paused. My grandmother says people only pause before saying their name when they don't want to tell the truth. Adriano couldn't help smiling. For the first time in months, perhaps years. You have a very smart grandmother. I wish. Her smile faded. I never knew mine. Silence settled between them. Rain tapped softly against broken windows. Emma quietly handed him a small paper cup filled with water. You can stay here tonight. They'll come back. They always do. You sound used to that. She shrugged. People always leave. Her words carried no anger, only acceptance. Adriano suddenly hated that. No child should speak as though abandonment were normal. He glanced around the tiny room. Cracked walls. A broken teddy bear. Children's drawings taped beside peeling paint. This wasn't just an orphanage. It was the only home she'd ever known. Do you have family? She looked toward the ceiling. I think so. You think? They said, my parents died. She spoke softly, but sometimes I dream about a woman singing and a man carrying me. She smiled sadly. Maybe dreams are all I have left. Adriano remained silent. He had buried too many memories of his own to offer comforting lies. Outside, distant sirens echoed through the storm. The Mafia war was moving across the city. Soon his men would find him. Soon he'd disappear back into the darkness where he belonged. Yet somehow he didn't want to leave. Not this room. Not this conversation. Not this little girl, who somehow looked at him without fear. Emma suddenly reached beneath her sweater and removed something tied around her wrist. A faded blue friendship bracelet. The threads had almost unraveled. My best friend made this. She carefully wrapped it around Adriano's wrist. For luck. I can't take this. You can. Why? She smiled again. Because I think you're lonely. His chest tightened. No one had ever described him so accurately with so few words. He looked down at the bracelet. It was cheap, worn, worthless to everyone except its owner. Yet somehow it felt more valuable than every diamond hidden inside his vaults. He quietly asked, "What if I never see you again?" Emma stood and walked toward the doorway. Then she turned back. "If I ever find my family, I'll come back." The promise sounded impossibly simple, childishly certain. Yet Adriano believed every word. She disappeared into the hallway. Moments later, headlights flooded through broken windows. Moretti, armored SUVs. No, DeLuca armored SUVs. His men had finally found him. Marco, his closest lieutenant, burst inside. "Boss." His eyes widened. "We've been searching everywhere." Adriano slowly stood. His body protested every movement. Marco noticed the bandage. "Who treated you?" Adriano looked toward the empty hallway where Emma had vanished. "A little miracle." Marco frowned. "What?" "Nothing." As they walked toward the waiting convoy, Adriano stopped at the orphanage entrance. He looked back. One final time. Emma stood upstairs, behind a cracked second-floor window, watching. She waved. He raised his hand, just once. Then the convoy disappeared into the rain. 18 years later, the abandoned orphanage stood exactly where time had forgotten it. Vines climbed its weathered brick walls. Broken windows reflected the Manhattan skyline in fractured pieces. Developers called it worthless. The city called it condemned. Newspapers called it the last obstacle preventing a $1 billion luxury redevelopment project. At precisely 9 o'clock, on a cold October morning, 23 black luxury SUVs rolled through the rusted front gates. Hundreds of reporters gathered outside. Television helicopters circled overhead. The richest developers in New York expected demolition. Instead, the man stepping from the lead Rolls-Royce calmly announced, "No one touches this building." The crowd fell silent. Standing before the orphanage was Adriano DeLuca, now 38 years old, billionaire, philanthropist, owner of the DeLuca Foundation. To the public, he was one of America's most influential businessmen. To New York's underworld, he remained the man whose name ended wars before they began. His charcoal Italian suit fit with effortless perfection. Silver cufflinks reflected the morning sunlight. Behind dark sunglasses, his expression revealed nothing. Only Marco, older now, streaks of gray at his temples, stood close enough to hear him whisper, "Restore everything." Marco nodded. The entire building, every hallway, every classroom, every scratch on the walls. Marco hesitated. "You've waited 18 years. Adriano slowly removed the faded blue friendship bracelet hidden beneath his shirt cuff. Though worn with age, he had never taken it off. His voice remained calm. "She promised she'd come back." Marco looked toward the orphanage. "And if she doesn't?" Adriano's eyes settled on the broken second-floor window where a little girl had once waved goodbye. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, hope softened the face of New York's most feared mafia boss. Then, "I'll keep waiting." 3 weeks later, the abandoned orphanage was no longer abandoned. Construction crews worked from sunrise until dusk, carefully restoring every hallway instead of tearing them down. Cracked, stained glass windows were rebuilt piece by piece. Original oak floors were sanded rather than replaced. Even faded children's drawings remained untouched beneath protective glass. The media couldn't understand it. Every business analyst in New York called the project irrational. One reporter finally asked Adriano during a press conference, "Mr. DeLuca, why spend nearly $80 million restoring a building everyone expected you to demolish?" Adriano adjusted the cuff of his charcoal suit. His expression never changed. "Because," he paused only briefly, "some places deserve to remember the people who were forgotten." No one understood what he meant. Only Marco did. Hundreds of miles away, Emma Bennett stared through the train window as Manhattan slowly appeared on the horizon. She hadn't returned to New York in nearly 10 years. Chicago had become home. Architecture school, historic restoration, award-winning preservation projects, a quiet apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. She had built the life she'd always dreamed of. Yet one phone call had changed everything. "Miss Bennett, this is the New York Historical Preservation Council. We'd like you to lead the restoration of Street Agnes Children's Home." The moment she heard the orphanage's name, her heart stopped. She accepted before discussing the salary, not because of the project, because of a promise. As the taxi rolled through the orphanage gates, Emma stepped out, holding rolled blueprints beneath one arm. She stopped walking. The building looked alive. Fresh brickwork, restored windows. The old bell tower stood proudly against the autumn sky. Even the oak tree where children once played had been carefully preserved. Her eyes slowly filled with tears. Someone had remembered. She quietly touched the weathered front door. "It's really still here." A construction worker smiled. The owner insisted. He wouldn't let us replace anything. Emma looked up. The owner? Mr. Adriano DeLuca. She frowned. The billionaire? The man nodded. They say he checks every room personally. He even made us rebuild old scratches in the hallway because they were part of the building's memory. Emma laughed softly. That's oddly sentimental. The worker shrugged. Doesn't fit his reputation. High above the entrance, standing alone on the second-floor balcony, Adriano watched every second. His breathing remained steady, his expression unreadable. Yet, Marco noticed the subtle change. Boss, that's her. Adriano never answered, because words had become impossible. She had returned. 18 years later, she had kept her promise. Emma looked older, more confident. Her chestnut hair rested over one shoulder. She carried herself with quiet certainty. But when she smiled, while touching the old doorway, he saw the little girl who had tied a blue bracelet around his wrist. Exactly the same. Marco quietly asked, "Should I bring her upstairs?" Adriano looked away. "No. You've waited 18 years. I know." "So?" His answer came almost reluctantly. "If she recognizes me, it has to happen naturally." Emma spent the afternoon walking through every room. The nursery, the dining hall, the tiny library. Every hallway brought back forgotten memories. She smiled when she found faded height markings still carved into a wooden wall. She had made those. Then she reached the old storage room beneath the staircase. The air left her lungs. The tiny room looked exactly as it had 18 years earlier. Even the broken cabinet remained in the same position. Her fingers slowly brushed across the rough wood. A strange ache settled inside her chest. "I know this room," she whispered. "But why?" Tiny fragments flickered through her mind. Rain, blood, a frightened young man, a blue bracelet. The memories disappeared before she could grasp them. She closed her eyes. "I've been here, haven't I?" That evening, the project team gathered inside the restored dining hall. Architects, engineers, city officials, construction managers, everyone waited. The owner was finally arriving. Outside, 20 black luxury SUVs entered through the front gate. Security teams stepped out with military precision. Every conversation stopped. The massive oak doors slowly opened. Adriano DeLuca entered alone. Tailored black Italian suit, silver watch, calm gray eyes. Absolute silence followed him. Even people who had never met him instinctively stepped aside. Power wasn't announced. It was felt. Emma looked up from the blueprints. Their eyes met. The room disappeared. For reasons neither understood, neither looked away. Seconds passed. Neither spoke. Emma frowned slightly. She knew those eyes. Somewhere, somehow, Adriano remained perfectly still. His pulse betrayed nothing. Inside, everything had changed. Marco quietly watched from the doorway. The boss had survived assassinations, vars, betrayals. Nothing had ever unsettled him. Until now, the project director finally cleared his throat. "Mr. DeLuca, this is our lead restoration architect, Emma Bennett." Adriano slowly walked toward her. Every executive around the table instinctively moved aside. Emma extended her hand. "It's an honor to meet you." He looked at her hand, then gently accepted it. His grip was warm, steady, not dominant, not weak. Their hands remained together one heartbeat longer than necessary. Emma felt something impossible. Recognition, like touching someone she'd known long ago. Adriano quietly said, "Welcome home." She blinked. "Excuse me?" He released her hand. "I'm glad someone who understands this place is restoring it." She smiled politely. "I grew up here. I know." Her smile faded. "You do? I've read your professional biography." A perfectly reasonable explanation. Yet somehow, it didn't feel like the truth. The meeting continued. Emma presented restoration plans with confidence. She explained how every classroom should preserve its original character, how the chapel ceiling could be rebuilt, how the orphanage deserved to become a children's cultural center instead of luxury apartments. Everyone applauded. Everyone except Adriano. He simply watched her speak. Every movement, every smile, every pause. Not obsessively, almost gratefully. Marco leaned toward him. "You've barely listened to the presentation. I already approved the plans. You've been staring at her for 43 minutes. I know." After the meeting ended, most guests left. Emma remained behind organizing drawings. The orphanage grew quiet again. Outside, autumn rain began falling softly. She wandered through the empty corridors. Something kept pulling her toward the second floor, toward one particular window, the same broken window where she suddenly stopped. Her breathing slowed. A memory, a young man standing outside. Black SUVs. Rain. She pressed her fingertips against the glass. "I remember." Footsteps echoed behind her. She turned. Adriano stood several feet away, hands in his coat pockets, watching quietly. Neither spoke. Finally, Emma smiled. "Beautiful view. It hasn't changed." She looked back outside. "You sound like you've been coming here for years." "I have." She laughed. "Why?" He answered honestly. "I made a promise." Her smile disappeared. "So did I." The words escaped before she realized she'd spoken them. Adriano's heartbeat skipped. "What kind of promise?" Emma looked toward the old oak tree. "I don't remember everything. But when I was little, I promised someone I'd come back." Silence. The rain grew heavier. Adriano stared at her. She remembered. Not everything, but enough. Emma frowned. "It's strange. I can't remember his face. Only, he was hurt and very lonely." She laughed awkwardly. "Funny, right?" Adriano looked out the rain-covered window. His voice almost disappeared. "No, it's not." She studied him. "Have we met before?" He turned toward her. Their faces only inches apart now. His gray eyes held something she couldn't name. Longing, regret, hope. "I think," she whispered. "I know you." He almost reached toward her. His hand lifted slightly, stopped halfway, then slowly lowered again. Not yet. She wasn't ready. He couldn't steal her memories. She had to find them herself. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from downstairs. Glass shattered. Someone screamed. Marco's voice thundered through the hallway. "Boss, get away from the windows." Before Emma could react, a sniper's bullet exploded through the stained glass window. Colored glass erupted across the corridor. Adriano moved before the sound finished echoing. He wrapped one arm around Emma's waist and pulled her violently against his chest. The second bullet slammed into the wall exactly where she had been standing. She gasped. His body completely shielded hers. Outside, A black motorcycle accelerated away through the rain. Bodyguards flooded the courtyard. Marco shouted into his radio, "Lock every exit. No one leaves." Emma clung instinctively to Adriano's jacket. Her heart hammered wildly. His heartbeat remained calm, steady, controlled. She looked up. He was already scanning rooftops, calculating angles, searching for the next threat, as if protecting people was instinct, not choice. Only then did she realize his arms were still around her, warm, protective, unwavering. Neither of them moved for one suspended heartbeat. The danger outside faded. There was only silence, only rain, only the strange comfort of standing in the embrace of a man she had met only hours earlier, yet somehow trusted with her life. Marco finally rushed upstairs. The shooter escaped. He looked at Emma, then at Adriano. His expression darkened. "Boss, they found her." Emma looked between them. "What does that mean?" Adriano's gaze never left the rain outside. His answer came in a quiet voice that carried more weight than fear itself. "It means the 18 years are over." Emma stared at him in confusion. "What are you talking about?" Adriano slowly turned toward her. For the first time, there was no distance left in his eyes, only determination. "From this moment on, you are no longer safe." And somewhere across New York, inside a luxury penthouse overlooking the city, Salvatore Romano watched the failed assassination on multiple surveillance screens. He smiled coldly. So, the little witness finally came home. He picked up an old photograph, an 11-year-old orphan girl standing beside a wounded young mafia soldier. He slowly burned the edges of the picture with a lighter. "Fin here. Before she remembers who killed her parents." The sniper disappeared into the rain before anyone could catch him. His motorcycle vanished between Manhattan traffic like a ghost. Inside the orphanage, no one spoke. Broken stained glass covered the hallway floor. Blue, crimson, and golden shards glittered beneath the emergency lights. Emma stood exactly where Adriano had pulled her seconds earlier. She looked at the bullet embedded deep inside the old oak wall. If he hadn't moved, she would already be dead. Her breathing remained uneven. Adriano calmly removed his overcoat and draped it over her shoulders. "You'll catch a cold." She looked up at him in disbelief. "I almost got shot. And you're worried about that?" His expression never changed. "I'm worried about everything." The answer came so naturally that neither of them realized what he had admitted. Emma searched his face. No fear, no panic, only quiet determination, as though protecting her had never been a decision. It had always been inevitable. Marco approached carefully. "The convoy is ready." Adriano nodded once. "We're leaving." Emma frowned. "I'm not going anywhere. You are. I have work here. You have enemies here. I don't even know who they are." "I do." She folded her arms. "And you're going to tell me?" "No." Her frustration immediately surfaced. "You don't get to make decisions for me." His gray eyes settled calmly on hers. "I know." "Then stop acting like you do." Silence. Every construction worker pretended not to hear. Marco quietly rubbed the bridge of his nose. He had negotiated peace between rival mafia families. Watching Emma argue with Adriano felt far more dangerous. Adriano finally spoke. "If you stay, They'll come back. So, let them. His jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. I won't risk that. She stepped closer. You don't even know me. His answer escaped before he could stop it. I know. Enough. The hallway fell silent. Emma stared at him. Something about the way he said it sounded deeply personal. An hour later, 24 black armored SUVs escorted Emma through Manhattan despite her protests. She sat inside Adriano's customized limousine. The luxurious cabin was wrapped in dark leather and polished walnut. Rain streamed across the reinforced windows. Neither of them had spoken for several minutes. Emma finally broke the silence. Where are we going? My penthouse. She turned sharply. Absolutely not. It isn't a request. She laughed in disbelief. Do you always order people around? No. Only people trying to get themselves killed. I don't need protection. You needed it 37 minutes ago. She looked away. He wasn't wrong. She hated that. Outside, the convoy crossed the Brooklyn Bridge. Helicopters circled overhead. Every intersection had already been secured by DeLuca security teams. Emma noticed. This seems a little excessive. Marco smiled faintly from the front passenger seat. The boss disagrees. 40 minutes later, the convoy disappeared beneath one of Manhattan's most exclusive skyscrapers. Private underground parking, biometric security, armed guards stationed every few yards. Emma slowly stepped from the vehicle. She looked upward. The building disappeared into the clouds. This is your home? No. She blinked. No, it's one of them. She laughed despite herself. Of course it is. The private elevator opened directly into the penthouse. Emma stopped walking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire New York skyline. Marble floors reflected soft, golden lighting. A black grand piano overlooked Central Park. Modern artwork hung beside centuries-old Italian paintings. Luxury surrounded every corner. Yet, something felt strangely empty. There were no family photographs, no laughter, no signs that anyone actually lived here. Only silence. It doesn't feel like a home. Adriano quietly removed his jacket. It isn't. Emma wandered slowly through the living room. Then she froze. On one wall hung a large framed painting of the orphanage, exactly as it had looked 18 years ago. Every broken window, every brick, every tiny detail. She stepped closer. You had this painted? Yes. When? 18 years ago. She turned toward him. Why? He answered without hesitation. So, I wouldn't forget. Her heartbeat quickened. Forget what? Forget who? Before she could ask, a maid entered, carrying fresh coffee. Adriano thanked her politely. The woman smiled warmly. Emma noticed something unexpected. Every employee looked at Adriano with genuine respect, not fear. That didn't match the stories she'd heard. Late that evening, Emma couldn't sleep. The penthouse guest room overlooked thousands of city lights. Yet something kept pulling her downstairs. She quietly left her room. Soft piano music drifted through the hallway. She followed it. Inside the living room, Adriano sat alone at the grand piano. His fingers moved slowly across the keys. The melody felt familiar, painfully familiar. Emma stood silently in the doorway. You play? He stopped immediately. Poorly. I don't believe that. He smiled faintly. My teacher wouldn't agree. She walked closer. I know this song. So, dui. What is it? He looked toward the rain-covered skyline. I don't know. My mother used to hum it. Emma frowned. My mother, she whispered. I think mine did too. The words hung heavily between them. Neither knew why. Suddenly, pain exploded inside Emma's head. She grabbed the edge of the piano. Images flashed before her eyes. Rain, blood, children crying, someone shouting, "Take the little girl." Another voice, "Protect her." A burning car, a silver necklace. She gasped. Adriano immediately stood. Emma. She staggered backward. I saw something. What? I don't know. It felt real. Her breathing became frantic. She squeezed her temples. There was fire. A woman screaming. A man carrying me. Then, a face. Not clear. Only gray eyes. The same gray eyes standing before her now. She looked directly at Adriano. Her voice barely escaped. Were you there? He didn't answer, because he couldn't. Not yet. Elsewhere, across the East River, inside Romano Tower, Salvatore Romano calmly watched security footage from the orphanage. His intelligence chief entered. We've identified the architect. Salvatore nodded. I know. The DeLuca boss is already protecting her. I expected that. The man hesitated. Our sniper confirmed something else. What? She remembered. Only 2 words. Yet Salvatore's expression changed immediately. How much? Not enough. But she's starting. Silence. Then Salvatore slowly stood. He walked toward a hidden vault built into the wall. Inside rested dozens of old evidence boxes. He removed one marked Hart Family. He opened it. A silver necklace, burned photographs, a blood-stained teddy bear, and one videotape. Salvatore smiled coldly. If she remembers everything, every king in New York falls. He closed the box. Kill her before that happens. Back at the penthouse, midnight arrived quietly. Emma finally managed to fall asleep. Her dreams didn't. She stood once again inside the orphanage. Only this time, she wasn't alone. A frightened teenage boy leaned against the wall, bleeding, exactly as before. He smiled weakly. I'm sorry. For what? For making you keep your promise. The dream shifted. The orphanage disappeared. A luxury courtroom replaced it. Her father, she knew somehow he was her father, stood before a judge. Then, gunfire, glass shattered, blood-covered white marble. Someone grabbed her hand. Run, she screamed, and woke. Emma sat upright, breathing hard. Sweat covered her forehead. Outside, thunder rolled across Manhattan. She looked at the bedside clock. 3:17. Unable to calm herself, she quietly walked downstairs. The penthouse was dark, except for one room, the library. A thin strip of light shone beneath the door. She gently pushed it open. Adriano stood inside, not reading, simply staring at a small wooden box resting on his desk. He hadn't heard her. Carefully, he opened it. Inside lay a faded blue friendship bracelet. Emma's heart stopped. The exact bracelet she had tied around a wounded stranger's wrist 18 years ago. Her voice trembled. You still have it. Adriano Frozzi. Very slowly, he turned around. Neither of them moved. The room suddenly felt impossibly quiet. Emma took one uncertain step forward. I made that. He nodded once. You did. Tears filled her eyes. It was you. His voice remained soft. Yes. She looked at him as 18 forgotten years suddenly began falling into place. You were the boy I was. You never died. No. You came back. I never left. The silence that followed felt almost sacred. Emma's lips trembled. You waited. For me? Adriano looked down at the faded bracelet wrapped carefully inside the wooden box. I told myself I wasn't waiting. He slowly closed the lid. But every year, I came back to the orphanage. Every birthday, every Christmas, every anniversary, hoping. Her eyes overflowed. Hoping for what? He finally looked at her. For a little girl who once promised she'd come home. Emma covered her mouth, unable to stop crying. Without thinking, she stepped toward him, then another step, until only inches separated them. Neither spoke. Adriano slowly raised his hand, almost brushed a tear from her cheek, stopped. His fingers hovered in the air. He still couldn't bring himself to touch her, not until she chose him. Emma noticed. Instead, she closed the remaining distance herself. Gently, she placed her trembling hand over his. For the first time in 18 years, the promise had finally been fulfilled. Neither of them noticed. A tiny red laser dot slowly appeared on the library window behind Adriano. Someone outside already had him in their sights. The tiny red laser dot remained perfectly still, resting directly over Adriano's heart. Neither he nor Emma noticed. They were too close, too consumed by the emotions 18 years had kept imprisoned. Emma's trembling fingers still rested over his hand. The faded blue friendship bracelet lay between them inside the wooden box. Her voice barely escaped. You kept it for 18 years. Adriano looked down at the worn threads. I never took it off. He slowly rolled back the sleeve of his black shirt. A faint blue stain circled his wrist. The bracelet had faded years ago, but sunlight had never touched the skin beneath it. Emma stared in disbelief. You actually wore it every day. He nodded once. It reminded me that someone once looked at me without seeing a monster. Her eyes filled again. No, I saw someone who was hurt. Silence settled gently around them. Neither wanted it to end. Then, the library window exploded inward. Glass erupted across the room. The sniper fired. Adriano reacted instantly. His arm wrapped around Emma's waist before the rifle report finished echoing. He threw both of them behind the heavy mahogany desk. The bullet tore through the chair where he had been standing less than a heartbeat earlier. Another shot. Another window shattered. Marco's voice thundered through the penthouse. Sniper! The entire building erupted into motion. Hidden bodyguards flooded every corridor. Emergency steel shutters slammed over every exterior window. The luxurious penthouse transformed into a fortress within seconds. Emma covered her ears. What is happening? Adriano calmly removed a concealed pistol from beneath the desk. They know where you are. Who? The people who murdered your parents? Her heart stopped. My parents? Another bullet struck the armored shutters. The entire room shook. Marco rushed inside. Boss. South Tower. Professional sniper. Already relocating. Adriano nodded. Helicopter? Waiting. No. Marco frowned. No? They expect us to flee. So? We stay. Marco smiled slightly. You already have a plan. I always do. Outside, 4 blocks away, the sniper calmly dismantled his rifle. Mission failed. Again, he pressed an encrypted earpiece. The girl is still alive. A cold voice answered. Then, phase 2 begins. Inside the penthouse, Emma struggled to understand. She looked at Adriano. You said, they murdered my parents. You weren't an orphan? No. You had a family. Then why don't I remember them? His expression darkened. Because someone made sure you wouldn't. Adriano walked toward a hidden bookshelf. He pressed his thumb against a concealed scanner. The entire wall silently opened. Emma stared. Behind it, a private archive. Hundreds of carefully labeled files. Maps, photographs, old videotapes, federal documents. One wall was covered entirely with newspaper headlines dating back nearly 20 years. At the center, a single photograph. A smiling family of 3. Emma stepped closer. Her breathing slowed. The little girl was her, standing between a handsome federal prosecutor and a beautiful violinist. Her fingers trembled. They're my parents. Adriano quietly nodded. Jonathan and Evelyn Bennett. Emma stared. I thought my last name was Bennett. It is, but not because of adoption. You never lost your family name. You lost your memories. He carefully placed another file on the table. Project Witness Shield. Emma frowned. I've never heard of this. You weren't supposed to. He slowly opened the folder. Inside rested photographs from 18 years earlier. Burned vehicles, federal agents, crime scene tape, a destroyed mansion. One photograph made Emma stop breathing. Her father, lying motionless beside an overturned black SUV. Her mother nearby, still clutching a violin case. Emma stepped backward. No. She shook her head violently. This isn't real. It is. I would've remembered. Adriano answered softly. No, you wouldn't. He sat across from her. The night your parents died, your father was preparing testimony against 6 mafia families. He had enough evidence to destroy every criminal empire on the East Coast. He trusted the wrong people. Emma whispered. Who betrayed him? Adriano remained silent for several long seconds. Then, someone inside the federal government. Her eyes widened. What? The mafia didn't kill your parents alone. They had help. Judges, politicians, federal officials, even FBI supervisors. Emma felt sick. That's impossible. I wish it were. He handed her another photograph. A courtroom. Her father shaking hands with a smiling senator. Emma looked closely. Recognition flickered. I know him. You should. He became vice president. Her heartbeat accelerated. What? Adriano nodded. Power protected the people responsible. Until now. Emma looked at him. Why are you telling me this? His answer came quietly. Because you're remembering. And once your memories return, they'll never stop hunting you. Silence settled over the room. Emma slowly looked toward the city skyline. So that's why you bought the orphanage. He nodded. You thought I'd come back. I hoped. And when I didn't, I waited. 18 years? 18 years. She smiled, sadly. That's insane. He almost smiled. I've been told that. Marco suddenly re-entered. His face had lost all color. Boss. What? We found something. He handed Adriano a tablet. Security footage. Recorded only minutes earlier. Emma leaned closer. The camera overlooked the orphanage entrance. A black sedan had parked outside. An elderly woman stepped from the car. White hair. Elegant coat. She looked toward the building. Then, she quietly placed flowers beneath the old oak tree before leaving. Emma gasped. I know her. Adriano immediately turned. Who? I don't know. But, my dreams. She was there. Marco enlarged the image. Adriano Frozi. I know her too. Emma looked at him. Who is she? He answered slowly. Margaret Hale. My father's attorney. Emma frowned. Your father? My adoptive father. He trusted her more than anyone. Marco interrupted. Boss. She disappeared 17 years ago. Adriano looked back at the screen. Apparently, she's still alive. Before anyone could speak, the building lights suddenly went dark. Complete darkness swallowed the penthouse. Emergency generators failed. Marco immediately drew his weapon. They cut the power. No. Adriano quietly looked upward. They're inside. Somewhere in the hallway. An elevator door opened. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Someone wasn't sneaking. They wanted Adriano to hear them coming. Emma instinctively moved closer. Without thinking, she reached for his hand. He immediately intertwined his fingers with hers. Firm. Protective. Natural. Neither acknowledged it. The footsteps stopped outside the library. A calm, male voice echoed through the darkness. Adriano. I expected better security. Emma felt Adriano's body tense. His grip tightened around her hand. Barely, just enough for her to notice. Salvatore. The man laughed softly. Still alive. I could say the same. The library doors slowly opened. Emergency lights flickered back to life. Standing alone, without bodyguards, without fear, was a Salvatore Romano. Perfectly tailored navy suit, silver hair, calm smile, as though he had entered a business meeting instead of enemy territory. His eyes immediately settled on Emma. There you are, the little witness. Emma instinctively stepped behind Adriano. Salvatore smiled wider. You have her trust already. Interesting. Adriano's voice became ice. Leave. I came to make an offer. No. You haven't heard it. I don't need to. Salvatore sighed dramatically. I was hoping you'd become less emotional with age. His eyes returned to Emma. You've started remembering, haven't you? She said nothing. He nodded knowingly. I thought so. He slowly removed an old photograph from his coat, then tossed it across the floor. It stopped at Emma's feet. She picked it up. A family photograph. Her parents, herself, and, standing beside them, a teenage Adriano DeLuca. Emma stared in disbelief. You knew my family. Salvatore smiled. Oh, he hasn't told you everything. Adriano quietly stepped forward. Enough. Salvatore ignored him. He didn't simply know your father. He worked for him. Emma slowly looked toward Adriano. What does he mean? The silence lasted too long. Much too long. Salvatore laughed. There it is. The secret. Emma whispered. Adriano, what aren't you telling me? His gray eyes finally met hers. For the first time, she saw guilt. Real guilt. His voice barely escaped. The night Your parents died. I wasn't trying to save them. Her heart stopped. I was the reason they were there. The entire room fell silent. Salvatore smiled. Finally, the truth had begun tearing them apart. Silence filled the library. Emma couldn't move. She stared at the old photograph, trembling in her hands. Her parents, a younger Adriano, a smiling family. Everything she believed about her past was unraveling. Her eyes slowly found his. You. Her voice broke. You knew them. Adriano didn't deny it. I did. You said you were protecting me. I was. But you also said you were the reason they died. The words nearly destroyed him. He lowered his eyes. I owe you the truth. Salvatore Romano smiled from across the room. This should be interesting. Adriano ignored him. 20 years of guilt finally surfaced. When I was 17, I wasn't a mafia boss. I was just a frightened kid trying to escape the DeLuca crime family. He looked toward the rain outside the shattered windows. Your father was the first honest man who ever believed I could become something different. Emma remained silent. He secretly helped me leave. He gave me evidence that could expose every mafia family in New York. He planned to testify. But Adriano's voice became quieter. They discovered we had met. Emma's breathing stopped. They followed me. I unknowingly led them straight to your parents. The room fell completely silent. I wasn't the man who killed them. He looked directly into her tear-filled eyes. But if I had never asked your father for help, they never would have found him. His voice cracked for the first time. I've blamed myself every day since. Emma closed her eyes. Pain, confusion, anger, compassion. Everything collided inside her heart. Before she could answer, Salvatore slowly began applauding. Beautiful, tragics, and completely useless. He calmly reached inside his coat. Every Moretti bodyguard raised their weapons. Instead of a gun, Salvatore removed a small, encrypted flash drive. This, he held it between two fingers, contains every surviving copy of Jonathan Bennett's investigation. Emma looked at it. Adriano immediately understood. The evidence, the reason her parents died. Salvatore smiled. The moment I destroy this, your father dies forever. He snapped his fingers. Hidden explosions suddenly rocked the entire skyscraper. The building shook violently. Fire alarms erupted. Emergency lights flashed crimson. Marco shouted into his radio. They planted explosives downstairs. The entire building is compromised. Adriano never looked away from Salvatore. Get Emma out. Marco hesitated. And you? I'm ending this. Emma grabbed Adriano's arm. No, I'm not leaving you. You have to. I'm done running. His gray eyes softened. 18 years ago, you saved me. You don't have to do it again. She shook her head. No, I made you a promise. If I ever came back, I'd never leave you alone again. His heartbeat caught. She had remembered. Not everything, but the promise. Salvatore laughed, touching. But none of you are leaving. He finally drew his pistol. Everything happened at once. Gunfire exploded across the library. Bodyguards returned fire. Bookshelves collapsed. Glass shattered. Smoke filled the room. Marco tackled two assassins, bursting through the side entrance. Emma instinctively pulled Adriano behind a marble pillar. A bullet shattered the photograph frame above them. Another struck the floor only inches away. Adriano looked at her. "You should have stayed behind me." She almost smiled. "You said that 18 years ago." The battle spread through the penthouse. Luxury became chaos. Crystal chandeliers crashed. Fire spread across expensive carpets. Outside, black Moretti SUVs surrounded the tower. Romano soldiers stormed the lobby. The war everyone feared had finally arrived. Marco's voice echoed through the smoke. "Boss, they're escaping to the rooftop." Salvatore wasn't running. He was heading for the helicopter waiting above the building. With the evidence, Adriano immediately sprinted toward the emergency stairwell. Emma followed. So did Marco. The rooftop was consumed by violent wind. Rain lashed across the helipad. A black helicopter waited with spinning blades. Salvatore stood beside it, holding the flash drive. He smiled calmly. "I always knew you'd chase me." Adriano slowly raised his pistol. "So this ends." Salvatore nodded. "It does, but not the way you think." He pressed a small remote. Across the city, television screens suddenly activated. News helicopters, billboards, digital displays. Every screen began broadcasting the files stored on the flash drive. Bank records, politicians, judges, police commissioners, photographs, videos. Every secret Jonathan Bennett had collected. The truth flooded New York in real time. Salvatore laughed. "If I can't control the city, I'll burn everyone with me." Within minutes, federal agencies, the FBI, the Department of Justice, the media, every major news network, the entire country watched corruption unfold, live. Sirens filled the skyline. Dozens of federal helicopters approached Manhattan. Salvatore looked satisfied. "The empire dies tonight." Adriano answered quietly. "It already did." He lowered his weapon. Emma frowned. "What are you doing?" He smiled faintly. "Trust me." The helicopter pilot suddenly collapsed. Marco stood behind the cockpit, silenced pistol still smoking. Moretti snipers emerged across neighboring rooftops. Every escape route disappeared. Salvatore looked around, realizing the truth. Adriano had never chased him. He had led him exactly where he wanted. The rooftop had always been the trap. For the first time, Salvatore lost his composure. "You planned this." Adriano nodded. "The moment you entered my library, you wanted the files. I wanted you." Federal helicopters landed across surrounding rooftops. Armed agents flooded the building. Salvatore finally understood. There was nowhere left to run. He looked toward Emma. "You know, your father almost won." She stared back. "He did win." Salvatore laughed bitterly. "No, he died." Emma slowly walked forward. "No, he raised me to choose the truth. You taught me fear. My father taught me courage. And courage always outlives fear." She looked toward Adriano. "So did love." Salvatore quietly lowered his weapon. Federal agents surrounded him. The longest mafia reign in New York ended without another shot. Months later, the orphanage officially reopened. Not as luxury apartments, not as a museum, but as the Jonathan and Evelyn Bennett Children's Foundation. Children laughed through hallways, once filled with fear. The chapel bells rang again. The gardens bloomed. Emma personally supervised every restored room. Nothing had been forgotten, especially one tiny storage room beneath the staircase. The same room where a frightened young mafia soldier once believed he would die. On opening day, hundreds of children filled the courtyard. Reporters gathered outside. The mayor gave a speech. Federal officials attended. No one noticed Adriano, quietly standing beneath the old oak tree, exactly where he had looked back 18 years earlier. Emma found him there. She smiled. You always hide during your own celebrations. They're not mine. They are. She stepped beside him. The orphanage exists because you kept your promise. He looked toward the children playing. I almost broke it. She gently took his hand. No, you kept waiting. 18 years. He looked at her. It was worth it. She reached into her coat pocket. Slowly, she removed another blue friendship bracelet, handmade, just like the first one. I made this yesterday. Adriano laughed softly. You've gotten better. Barely. She carefully tied it around his wrist, beside the faded original. The first one was for luck. She smiled through tears. This one is so you never have to wait for me again. His eyes softened. For the first time in decades, the feared Mafia Boss looked completely at peace. He gently brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. This time, he didn't stop himself. Their foreheads touched beneath the old oak tree. Children laughed around them. Autumn leaves drifted through golden sunlight. Then, he kissed her, not with desperation, not with obsession, but with quiet gratitude, the kind born only after surviving years of loneliness. As evening settled over the orphanage, Emma looked toward the restored second-floor window. I kept my promise. Adriano intertwined his fingers with hers. So did I. Together, they walked inside, not as the frightened orphan girl and wounded young fugitive who had met 18 years earlier, but as two people who had finally found the home both of them had been searching for all along. Above the entrance, a small bronze plaque caught the last rays of sunlight. It read, "Sometimes the people who save your life are the ones you spend a lifetime waiting to thank." The orphanage doors slowly closed behind them, and for the first time in 18 years, neither of them was waiting anymore.